I did read somewhere that you said you thought it's very important films like this are made. I just wondered if you could perhaps tell me that and elaborate on why you think so.
It's interesting, isn't it? I think films like this and Social Network, which is the predecessor of this film, very proud to come in that line, because these tech titans are forging our world, really. And in a way, I don't think almost we recognise it yet fully. We're talking about it a lot, but actually having any kind of real analysis of it is very, very difficult. That's partly because they're becoming so powerful. You know, you think about Google, it's like literally, it's holding its hand out to governments of countries saying, how can we help you? Governments sort of don't seem to be able to have the power anymore to make these huge corporations answer to them at all. It's becoming more and more difficult. There's been a little flurry recently where the European Parliament has stood up against Facebook at one point, which caused a real frisson. So you go, if they're going to be that powerful, who's going to hold them to account? Who's going to actually say that they're not some kind of extraordinary thing that we can't challenge or speak of in any other way other than just buying their products? And their products are brilliant. Clearly, they work. And it's artists who have to do that. That's my belief. And that's why Sorkin taking Zuckerberg in Social Network, and no Steve Jobs in this, you know, he humanises these forces, really, and says they do belong to us. They come out of us. They're part of us. They represent things that we aspire to, visions that we want to participate in. But they're also, they share with us the flaws that we all have, and we recognise that. And that's an important job for artists to do, I think, and increasingly so, as these corporations just balloon out of control in terms of size. They're bigger than most countries now. You know, I mean, that's just an extraordinary thing. And they appear to be so benign. But of course, it won't always be like that. And you get little hints. You know, these search engines that are actually recognising you. If you ask for a flight to Amsterdam more than once, they start putting the price up because they know you're desperate. You go, hang on a minute, I bought into the idea that these search engines would make me able to find the cheapest one, but no, actually they're working behind the scenes. You know, so it's kind of like there's the benign and then there's the less nice side of it as well. And it's artists who will make them answerable, I believe.
Could you give me a snapshot of how you felt when you first read Aaron's script? I mean, he's a playwright as well as a screenwriter, and it sort of feels very theatrical in a good way.
Yeah, it's so when I first got the script, I was astonished. It was like a starburst of a script. I mean, it was just, but it was suffocating as well as being just exhilarating, one and the same time, because it's like, it was 185 pages. I mean, most scripts are maximum 120. This is 185 pages of dialogue, and there are 3 scenes, and it's all in theatres. And you go, how is this not going to be a play? And of course, there is the key, and Fincher had done it before with Social Network. There are keys in there for you to enter, and where you can actually expand it and make it into a film. But I was astonished by this depiction of a visionary who's brought. I mean, he takes Jobs, and it's sort of true about Jobs, but it's expanded and abstracted. So he becomes a Shakespearean figure, really, in a way, of enormous power and influence and achievement, who's brought low by his own failings, but achieves some redemption through recognition of that, really. I loved that, and I loved the fact that it was about fathers and daughters, really. I've got 2 daughters of my own. I've sacrificed, I hope not in the way that he does, but, you know, it's for others to judge that. I've sacrificed time with them for, you know, this kind of world we work in, you know, and so I recognise a lot in it myself. I never thought I'd recognise stuff in Steve Jobs, but it's weird, I did, and there is something about the force field that you have to create to make films is also, in a minor way, what he was doing, really, which is trying to kind of create something. It's a creationist myth, to make something appear in front of you that doesn't exist, and it will exist. Believe in me, and it'll be there. And it's weird, those connections with it as well. So I had lots of reactions to it like that.
I think I've read a lot of people say it seems a bit of a departure for you, but I wonder, from your perspective, do you feel as though it has a lot of synergy with other work you've made before, in the sense it's, I don't know, perhaps it's kind of heightened in some ways, like some of the other films you've made?
No, it's interesting. It's impossible for me to say how much it connects with other stuff I've done. It felt like I wanted to do it because it was the biggest challenge I could perceive. That how you dealt with this. There's so much stuff about this guy anyway. There's a whole mythology about him out there anyway. How do you deal with it? I didn't want to do a biopic. I'm not really interested in biopics. I've done one before that was about a true story, but again, it was abstracted into one episode, which is the guy getting trapped and the days he spent in the canyon. But it didn't try and cover his life. It tried to illustrate him through that event, and in this case, through these 3 events. So I suppose there is some connection there, I guess. But it felt like you always trying to do something different. The problem is that they all end up the same. They're usually. I have to tell you this because a journalist has told me this. I haven't identified this myself. A journalist said, all your films are about a guy overcoming impossible obstacles. And you go, is that right? And of course they often are, so maybe there is a connection there as well.
Can I quickly ask you about Michael? Because obviously it's a stunning performance. Can you just wax lyrical about his brilliance?
About Fassbender. I don't think there's many actors in the world who could do this part. And he's one of them, really. And he has... he's there's a bit of, it's a funny thing to say, but there's a bit of the Cary Grant in him as well, which people don't quite realise because he's so ferocious and intense and intimidating. There's a beautiful side of him, there's a wit in him as well, which is one of the few, because he plays jobs completely uncompromising. He doesn't pull any punches, he doesn't ease back on anything at all, but he has a wit, and he understands Sorkin's wit, and the wit leavens it to a degree, but it also allows him to make this journey of redemption ultimately, because he doesn't pull any punches. It's totally uncompromising, instinctive, analytical at the same time, brilliant technical ability to conquer this mountain of words and somehow make it feel like a brilliant man, but you've got access to him, because that's very difficult, how you represent this brilliance, and yet he makes him feel accessible. And I think the way Michael does it is he lays various depth charges in that first act and that second part, which begin to resonate then. They begin to explode as he begins to disintegrate in the third part. And the other thing about Michael that's incredible is he conquered these words, and then he moves towards wordlessness. Because by the end, and his daughter confronts him, he has got nothing left to say other than the truth, which is that a man who made the most beautiful things in the world, which we can all agree on, we all use them, is himself poorly made. And he moves so beautifully towards that, and finds a kind of redemption, ultimately. It's an amazing performance, yeah.
Do you have any anxiety at all about taking on the project? Because people have such strong opinions about Steve Jobs, more so than many other leading figures in our industry.
Yeah, but it's true. There's lots of anxieties you might think you'd have about taking on a project like this. There was also a director attached to it beforehand, who's one of my kind of the guys I admire most, David Fincher. He'd made a brilliant job of Social Network, a film where his work was not recognised in the way. I mean, it's just an extraordinary work of discipline, the directing of that. And I thought, if I can emulate that, if there's a way that I can actually do that as well as that, that should make me pleased to be able to take on something like this rather than anxious and worry about it. And the writing of the Jobs character, and then Michael's performance of it, and the other actors, you realise you're working with the best people. What more could you ask for? You're working with the best there is, really. So something that actually Jobs himself would have recognised, because he liked A-teams.